Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now, to those new to this channel, welcome by the way, this premise may seem quite insignificant to you, that it doesn't seem like it would really matter in the grand scheme of things regarding choices within Dragon Ball as well as potential destinies. Well, actually, it utterly changes what Dragon Ball even is supposed to be about. Goku in the original learnt an important lesson in this 21st tournament, where he realized through Jackie Chun that you should never stop training, and that out there will always be somebody who could topple you quite easily, and that is why you should never settle for what you have your lot in life. Funny thing is, Goku didn't really get that memo, and instead he won anyway that contest, and went on to become the biggest jerk the Dragon World has ever seen. In the last part, we had the aftermath of Goku's foolish choice to side with Cell, thinking he was some kind of android detective. And Piccolo was absolutely fed up with the Saiyans' choices. And what made this even worse is that Cell had Goku's DNA inside of him. This Goku's DNA. And that meant that he would be just as tenacious, just as stubborn, and just as downright terrible to be around. He doesn't like to lose. Much like the real deal. And for once, Goku decided that maybe Tenshinhan wasn't to blame. I know, right? I never would have seen that coming in this timeline. Meanwhile, Vegeta was having to deal with losing some appendages, and since according to the lore that senzu beans were ineffective in generating new limbs, if the original wound had started to heal over all by itself, it is true, look it up by the way. Because of that, the prince was now having to adapt to artificial limbs developed by Bulma. Granted, these were pretty much the best humanity could offer, but it was still a massive climb down from what he was used to. You know, having original limbs. Krillin managed to get 18 away from the battlefield at the cost of Tenshinhan's life, and took her to Capsule Corp. Which might have been one of the worst ideas in this story, since Vegeta saw her and roared in anger just looking at her, which guided Cell right to them, and became perfect. You see folks, Goku's not the only one here that can make questionable decisions. Let's resume. As you can probably tell, things were starting to look quite grim. Vegeta had locked eyes with Android 18, and thanks to his new robotic limbs, he was a much more feisty and ferocious individual than before. He had lost badly, and now he was a shadow of his former self. Krillin had brought her right to him. And for what? Just to dangle her in his face, he thought? To remind him of his failures with 19? And that wasn't the only thing the group had to wrap their heads around here. Cell had reached his perfect form because of 18 being there and getting the jump on them all. And not only that, he wasn't even going to give them the dignity of a quick snuffing out. And oh yes, he didn't seem to be all that concerned about their combined strengths. Not even the prince's upgrades bothered him. He had taken pity on them and gave them 5 further days to train to give him a proper challenge. He viewed them all with contempt, and this compounded the negative mood all the more. Meanwhile, Goku was completely unaware of what was happening outside the time chamber, since he and Trunks were locked away there, with Vegeta's future son acting as some sort of support for the Saiyan. And instead of railing against other people like he often did Goku, he was simply training with Trunks. Just training. For the first time in a long while, Goku wasn't fixated on anything, protesting against somebody. Injustice, no. He was just doing what he used to love doing. Sparring with people, without any sense of resentment or complications or something being unfair. Just training. Without any of the main Z fighters there to distract him, he could allow himself to let his guard down a little bit, sensing that Trunks, after all this time, was not a threat to his safety or integrity. Besides, Cell had become the absolute worst in his book, rivaling the likes of the Triclops. Trunks was nothing in comparison, to which the future boy was grateful? And was going to use to his advantage to try and get through to him. Trunks had the notion that if he could get through to Goku, he could perhaps reignite the heroic version of Goku, and the just Saiyan that he had remembered from stories back in the future, instead of the bitter, angry and twisted soul he had seen before him in this timeline. And after a particularly productive day of training, Trunks sat down with Goku and offered him a drink. Hey, may I ask you something? He started to say. Ask away, if you must. Goku was not the one for small talk, obviously, but he would allow this since there was not really much else to do around here other than sparring and sleeping and eating. Why do you hate Tenshinhan so much? I don't understand. Trunks braced himself for a tirade from Goku for daring to ask him such a question. But instead, Goku looked away, timidly, furrowing his brow, as if he were trying to put together a decent response, taking his time. A lot of painful memories flashed before his eyes as well. His victory against Jackie Chun all those years ago, the elation that came from it, a satisfied job well done, and how that was all brought down thanks to his subsequent loss against Tenshinhan in the following tournament. Goku did reply, after a few moments of icy silence, mind. Back in the day, I fought Tenshinhan. At first, it was a very spirited match. I was having the time of my life against a strong opponent that had a smart approach to battle. But it all came tumbling down when he had to resort to cheating so as to win. Trunks was baffled. Really? Tenshinhan cheating? He could never imagine the future guardian of Earth seemingly doing something so seedy. Goku continued. He's never admitted to it. Not ever. What made it worse was that Kami chose him as his student and not me. He took that away from me. What was rightfully mine after all I had done to protect this planet? Well, look where that got us. Kami's choice. Trunks was about to bring up the whole siding with Cell thing, but chose not to. He was actually getting somewhere that would have completely derailed everything. He decided instead to pretend like he was on Goku's side. He cheated? How exactly? Goku didn't answer for a while. He then got up and asked to do some light exercises whilst he explained. It would help me articulate my thoughts, Trunks. So the young boy agreed, and they then set about doing some light stretches and jumps and stuff. The future boy allowed Goku that crumb of comfort, and it seemed to provide him the answer that he might have been looking for. He started, but Goku immediately got defensive. What's it to you? Why do you care? Trunks felt a twinge of nervous tension forming, but his father came in clutch. I heard stories about you from my father. I was just curious is all. Tenshinhan never struck me as the deceptive type. In fact, he spoke fondly of your power. I can't remember a single moment where he's ever badmouthed you. Goku blinked for a moment. Was this kid serious? What sort of trickery was this? Did Tenshinhan put him up to this? Was Trunks really trying to trick him? No, of course not. Poor, naive Trunks. He obviously had no idea. Tenshinhan never told him. Listen, kid. I appreciate that you're trying to fix things between myself and Tenshinhan, but it's just not possible. It's been too long since it all flared up. It's too late for me. Trunks was sensing that he was losing the verbal battle and had to change tack fast. I'm not really trying to make you two friends. I was just curious as to what happened. Cell has his genetic makeup, right? He might want to use it to his advantage. I need to know. Goku stopped. That was a good point, actually. The images behind his eyes were flashing by so fast. The exchange between himself and Tenshinhan in the air from back in the day. Goku biting, Goku scratching, Goku having to win. He had to win. A Kamehameha in the face. And the memory of him pulling Tenshinhan under the truck. Goku then asked Trunks to do some sparring, despite both of them being quite exhausted already from today's proceedings. The realization then struck Goku at that point, where his attacks against Trunks became fiercer, almost mirroring the duel from that day. It was only after a further few seconds when he realized that he was basically clawing into the boy's arm, where Trunks' yells allowed him to snap back to reality. Trunks was not getting what Goku was doing, and he was starting to panic. Goku! Goku! Control yourself! When the Saiyan came back to his senses, he clocked on as to what happened and what he had done. I'm sorry. We should focus on training. Yeah, we should. But keep that aggression for Cell and the androids, will ya? Afterwards, they took a more prolonged break from training, and never spoke of that moment again to anyone. Outside this impromptu therapy session, Vegeta was being scolded by everyone, including Raditz and Nappa. "What the hell, man? You did exactly what that bug wanted!" Raditz wasn't pulling any punches here, and Vegeta, who had been extremely furious just moments ago at the sight of Android 18, had completely collapsed in ferocity. I did not expect him to do that. Are we the only smart ones here? Us and the kid? Raditz stood with his arms crossed looking at Nappa. Speaking of, Kakarot and the kid should be finishing up soon. What's the order after them? I'll go in with Vegeta. I planned to go in with Tenshinhan earlier, but considering all that's gone down since... He looked to Vegeta. Everyone was still looking grim about this. Listen, we can bring him back with the help of the Namekians, but we have to focus on the task at hand. Vegeta was looking completely broken. We can't do it. He was toying with me, even after a year of training. Since when did you become such a scaredy cat, Vegeta? Where's your Saiyan pride? Vegeta chose not to answer that, the Saiyan pair looking a little nervous. This was clearly something that had burnt Vegeta badly. He had rarely acted in this manner. Actually, they couldn't even remember the last time he had. This was looking pretty bad. Before this conversation could take an even worse turn for the prince, Goku and Trunks had left the time chamber, their energies returning to the other's senses. They were then brought up to speed with what happened. And although Trunks was visibly enraged that his father had allowed Cell to transform in front of all of them, Goku wasn't mad. He wasn't holding this against the prince. This was weird. Trunks was being the hothead here and Goku, the rational one. What had happened in there? I mean, of course we know, but the Dragon Team doesn't, and they never will. Goku said that Vegeta had screwed up before that, and that this time, to truly make amends, he was going to own this failure and learn from it. Also, there was the news about Tenshinhan's death, which hit Goku harder than he thought it would. No Dragon Balls, no Guardian, and in this version of the timeline, no instant transmission either. Goku decided to hone his skills elsewhere. He needed time to think, giving the rest time to train. As the 5 days passed, the Saiyans and Piccolo were as ready as they would ever be. Obviously, Cell, thanks to his sheer arrogance and self-loving, broadcasted his entire Cell Games plan to the world. He was proclaiming this to be a tournament to end all tournaments. And if he had his way, it would have ended all human life. But yeah, he got his way. As you could probably imagine, this version of Cell was even louder about this than previously, thanks to the Goku in him. He really needed to tone it down. The real article was unsure if his and Trunks' training would be enough to overcome this guy. But in this case, combined forces would suffice. Teamwork was paramount. He would try his best to rely on others instead of trying to do everything by himself. They also instructed Dr. Briefs that if anything were to go wrong, that he, Bulma and Baby Trunks should evacuate the planet at a moment's notice, head off into space to look for Namek. Times were dire, but not completely lost. Cell was there, at the arena, waiting for them. He was willing to wait patiently for these fighters that he really wanted to compare himself to. But they weren't the only ones there who wanted a piece of the bug. Jimmy Firecracker was there to show everybody the new martial arts champion of the world, who would also be willing to challenge the monstrous Bugman. And the name of this champion? Chi-Chi. What? Masako, what? What happened? Where's Hercule? What kind of arcane and bizarre hoodwinkery is this? Well, hear me out, folks. Think about it. Since Goku and Chi-Chi never married, and the former resorted to living as a hermit, Chi-Chi's original mission to woo Goku through martial arts and commonality went nowhere. She had to channel her frustration instead into something else. That's right, she chose to become a professional fighter. When our heroes had been occupied with other things going on in the story, Chi-Chi remained disgruntled by her loss at the hands of Goku, who was extremely uncaring at the time. This turned her off of him completely. No romantic feelings at all now. And instead, it motivated her to train even more. And during all those years of the characters ignoring the tournaments, she sort of ingratiated herself into it, becoming a big thing amongst the general populace. A celebrity. Which of course led to her beating Hercule in the final of the 24th Budokai, and becoming Earth's champion. Before she could throw down a challenge against Cell though, who viewed her with mild entertainment, He sort of recognized Chi-Chi, actually. Goku stopped her in her tracks, Chi-Chi spotting him and giving him the stinkiest of stink eyes. You. Are you absolutely insane? Shouted Goku with absolutely no tact whatsoever. We don't even know if our powers are enough to beat this guy. You'll be pulverized in seconds. Chi-Chi rounded on the Saiyan and pushed back, Cell looking like, am I interrupting something here? And you expect me to just stand here and watch as this thing eviscerates the planet? For fun? If I'm going to go down, I will die on my feet protecting it. Ah, spirit. I like that. Even though Son Goku is accurate, I do respect your... But Goku carried on. That won't be long then. Chi-Chi went up in volume. And what would you care? I may not have any of those insane powers, but I'm no weakling. I will prove it once and all to you. Ho ho ho! Goku tried to reason with her, but she was unwilling to listen. Cell held a hand in Goku's direction. Wait, Goku. Let this one go. And make the biggest mistake in her life. But at least you won't live to regret it. You don't scare me, freak. Wait your turn. Then you can start with the postulating. When the brackets were placed, Trunks decided to take the first round against Cell. After all, he felt kinda responsible for Cell being in this timeline in the first place. The fight was about as spectacular as Goku's one with Perfect Cell in the original, the future boy having a much better understanding of his power in this version of events. But the Bugman was in a whole other league though. He was learning quickly, and was able to wear Trunks down and eventually defeat him. He didn't kill him though. Not yet. As Cell decided that the other participants were being lazy, just standing around doing nothing, he decided to let his Cell Juniors out, giving them some entertainment. He was hoping that someone would provide him a proper challenge out there, as his eyes were set on Goku. They both understood that they hated to lose. But first, Cell had to get rid of everyone that was in the way. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. If you'd like to see a timeline where Cell is a little more nice, check out this timeline here, where he becomes a good guy and has a family. It's quite wholesome. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!